Yeah, I work in the academy side, so I'll probably start on that one. I think at the minute it's probably not done very well. I think probably Hugo might agree as well. Generally, when a player transitions from an academy to a first team, even though they're 16, they're put in a first team group and sort of left to work it out for themselves.
And we'll talk about a certain East London club, which will go unnamed. But when I arrived there, they didn't get kit. The academy players who came in didn't get kit because they hadn't earned it yet. They weren't allowed to eat in the first team dining because they hadn't earned it yet. And I remember thinking, like, these are our best young players who we want to give every opportunity to, to succeed.
I agree that that in many clubs maybe it has to be done better because mostly what you see is the load, the physical load, but the mental aspect is totally forget. And this is also what I see sometimes in my club. But I get actually an older player, first team, 17, 18, sometimes 16 years. They are out of the growth pain. This is more, I think, related to younger player.
But yeah, I think during my journey to get Spurs, it's certainly improved. Now in our first team, we have a specific coach who is that transition between our academy players and first teams, the ones who train in the matchday squads. It throws up lots of challenges. It does test you. So if we have players who are under 18, there's child safeguarding, which is obviously absolutely paramount.
To start off with a little bit about how you got where you were, where you are now. I think everyone has a different journey, everyone has a different path. So, I mean, keep it a little bit succinct, but I guess look back to when you were growing up. What did you want to do? What did you end up doing? And how did you get to where you are now? So, I don't know who wants to start.
Ravi, sure.
Yeah.
Hi everyone. It's actually fantastic being here because 10 years ago I was cutting my teeth in football medicine here at Milton for 3 years with James as well. So it's actually a privilege to be back. Kind of fell into sports medicine about 15 years ago, and then since then been on a journey working through different sports and had the privilege of being at Spurs for the last 7 years. Working with lots of great managers. So I'm there at the moment, enjoying every minute of it.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a physio by background, so always loved football growing up. Had a lot of injuries, like a lot of people that ended up in the medical sort of field. So we'll see physios and football actually at maybe 15, 16 right now. Maybe this is a route for me to do what I love and get into work, which is what I always want to do as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Luca Rosa, originally from Italy, and I'm a sport physiotherapist now at FC Bosch, which is a club in the second division in the Netherlands. This is, of course, when you're a child, you have a dream. You want to be a football player, and you want to be the next Italian central defender. But I ended up to be a sport physiotherapist, and I got to professional football. Now I've seen in Bosch is the club where I'm working with as a sport physiotherapist.
Great, and I guess I'll introduce myself, although I'm not going to do much speaking on the panel. So I've been head of player care at Brentford, West Ham and Southampton, and run my own company the last 5 years where we've been helping clubs across the world to improve their player care. And so I've got a very different lens to performance, I guess, and it'll be really interesting to kind of compare and contrast my experience and then your experiences as well. But I think it'd be really interesting to start with how you get buy-in for what you do. And we've all worked with different managers. I think I've worked with one time 3 managers one season. How do you adapt what you do, manager to manager or coach to coach or even leader to leader? Do you try and get them onto your way of thinking? Do you try and adapt yourself to how they are? Is there a bit of both? Does it really depend? Maybe, Luca, do you want to start with you?
Yes, but maybe I'm the lucky one. The biggest challenge I have encountered in my career is on a match day +1 during the week. Then the coaches are the coaches I had were more relaxed in what kind of recovery strategies we wanted to use. But match day is +1, then they start to give some ideas, and sometimes the ideas that they had were different from the idea that we had as a medical staff. Some coaches see match day +1, the recovery day as a team building opportunity. It's not. It's the focus. It's not team building. So they want to do some fun stuff on the beach, low intensity. I understand some nice exercises to have this team building. But we as a medical staff want to keep the players inside to have another different work. And yeah, at that point, then we try to get the coaches to our side to do what we want, because we know how important it is to deload the joint, to give it another different load compared to the one of the day before during the match. And so I would say in match day +1, yes, we are a little bit more strict with what we want, and we try to get the coaches to our side. And during the week, I didn't really experience some problem like this.
Yeah, in terms of working managers, I think with over time you sort of see different managers come in, different managers go, and all of them have very different approaches, and a lot of them have success with those different approaches as well. So I think it's important to be aware of the fact there's lots of different ways of being successful, and I don't think it's a case of this is my way, this is your way. I think it's a case of trying to find commonalities between what you both want to do, and also having a relationship. And I think coaches spoke before of like a relationship bank, where like I've got credit a bit of relationship in your bank before you give me a little bit back as well. So that's important to be able to do, is to be able to give them something, as well as taking players away and taking players back. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to be successful. And I think finding a balance between some managers, a lot of the time it's transitions as well. When a new manager comes in, we often see loads of injuries in the first month or two after that. So it's also understanding with the manager, okay, what's your game model? How do you like to play? How do you like your players to press, or whatever it may be? Okay, what are the players that we've got currently able to do? And if there's a big gap there, then we might need to do that slowly. If the gap's not so big, then we might be able to push and accelerate that a little bit more. So it's just understanding what they want and what your players are already able to do. Is I think a big part of that as well.
Could you go into that? You know, when you said when the manager changes, you often see a lot of injuries. Can you talk about this, like some of the science behind that, or why you would see that?
Yeah, I mean, typically changing in the training style. They'll come in and they'll want, say they're a high pressing team. They like their team to press high. They want to practice those drills and encourage that in training. Then they also want them to press high in a game as well. And if the players aren't used to that, it's a new demand, new stimulus. Then that puts them at risk. I think also as well, new manager comes in, players want to impress the new manager. That's a part of it as well. So I think the intensity you see them putting out in training, because all of a sudden every shirt's up for grabs again. So every player is at it 110%. So that's also a factor as well. So it's just being aware of the risk when those transitions are happening with new managers and things. Yeah, don't think I can swallow that, right?
Yeah, no, I would certainly echo that. I think the privilege where I work is when you strip it all back, you work with different cultures, people from all over the world, and they have different belief systems. But what fundamentally doesn't change is player safety, long-term performance, and evidence-based practice. And they really respect you for having that structure. Yes, they challenge, and we do give and take of how we work. I would say we implement to the manager, or the manager implements to us. You always have to build that relationship, but the fundamentals never change.
Great, thank you. I want to encourage the audience to participate throughout, but also for these guys to kind of talk to each other as well. And so if there's anything that comes up, rather than waiting to the end, feel free to put up your hand and we can dive into certain things. I like to keep that nice and free-flowing. So sometimes, I mean, I think we've all worked at a high enough level, but there are sometimes players who, you know, would be labelled as more difficult than others, and that's for a variety of reasons. It might be culture. It might be they haven't adapted yet. You're just a more stubborn person potentially. How do you work with those players? And is it a case of you'll put your help out there, if they don't take it, you leave it, or will you keep going after them? Or is it a variety of approaches for different people? What do you see?
Yeah, it's a great question. Particularly when you're playing 3 games a week, and the pre-panel was saying people get sick of each other. It's knowing the person. But when people say difficult players, I wouldn't label them as difficult because there's always a human being behind the athlete. So they're either anxious, frustrated, worried about something. But often these guys get to the top because they have very high standards. So they expect that from the performance team. So when you get to know them on a personal level and you have mutual respect, that is when you can get to a point where you can respectfully challenge their beliefs or what they want to do. And then over time, again, that give and take, then you can win together. They want to be available, the coach wants them available, and so do I. So it's definitely a mutual beneficial relationship.
Do you find when maybe players have been viewed from the outside as a certain way, potentially, I think there has to be a bit of arrogance to be at the top level anyway, but certainly I've worked with players who are externally, either when they've come in or when I've joined a club, this is going to be a bit of a challenge. But actually, when they're in the safety of either the medical room or even in the training ground, they're a very different person, and they're much more open-minded, or even just different in a way than you found them, or you thought they would be from the outside.
Yeah, certainly. I think I have been fortunate that I've worked in the main very good guys behind the scenes. But yeah, I think normally I think they're always examining what's new to them. So when they're impressed with the structure, and what I find is actually players fundamentally don't care how much you know. They care how much you care about them. And once you win that respect, your knowledge and expertise and experience will come through. But they don't want to be talked at, they want to talk to somebody.
Do you want to jump in on the difficult players or even some changes behind the scenes?
Yeah, I think it's you have to embrace it and expect it. But ultimately, I think if you're a very compliant person, you're probably not going to make it very far as a professional footballer. Like ultimately, you need that edge to be able to push through things, be competitive. So I don't think we can expect to work with players who just will do what we want to do. And I don't think we want to try and change that too much. I think we've got a team full of compliant players, you wouldn't have a very competitive team. But yeah, I think buying in terms of addressing what is underneath it. Is it beliefs about what they should be doing? Is it previous experiences? Like Ravi said, like them understanding that you're there for them and care for them and want best for them is a huge part of that. So a relationship again is massive. And then also I think being able to show them something meaningful as well. So whether that's a test that they're getting stronger on, a metric that they're improving at, I think as soon as you can give them something and show them an improvement, that typically can help with that buying process as well.
Yes, and I agree with Ravi that probably the label difficult players it's wrong because if we talk about most difficult players are probably the older players coming from somewhere else, coming from 20 years of football, and in 20 years in football has changed a lot. And now they play with me, and I have the expectation that if I tell them go on an ice bath, they do it. It's not going to work like this, and also because they performed 20 years ago probably really well, because otherwise they didn't have a career without ice bath or without hyperbaric oxygen chamber or whatever we have. So yes, we have to take into consideration that if they are more difficult, it's because they have beliefs and experience. But for sure, I'm not gonna leave it like it is. I'm trying to educate them, because if you are 35 and you are still an athlete, it also means that you also still want to learn something, and it's never too late. You can add something to your recovery strategy, even if you haven't done it for 20 years. So education, talk with him, and talk with them, and of course give them the feeling that you still care about their career, even if it's probably almost to the end. But some players still play till 40 years, so in 5 years you can still do more to your recovery. So yeah, again, educate them, understand their beliefs and their experience, and try to add something as much as is possible.
I think it's I think it's important as a performance team to have a growth mindset. Often I've learned from my players. As a doctor, when I was at this club or in this country, I was able to get this sort of medication that helped me with X, Y, and Z, even though I've never heard of it. But then if you try it and it's not against anti-doping rules, I can bring that into my practice and actually does benefit. So it's never been closed-minded saying, because I'm on the medical performance side, I know it all. It's actually having the open mindset, saying, actually, what can the athlete bring to me?
And I really think they appreciate this, that you try, that you bring things from other countries. And I really see that as long as we try to do something for them, they really appreciate it.
Here we got a question down here.
Gentlemen, I wonder, taking sleep quality as part of recovery. How important do you consider really good sleep? How many percent of the total recovery does it contribute to? Does the question make sense?
That's a great question, because for me it's a non-negotiable. With us this season being in the Champions League, we can be flying in different time zones and getting back at 2-3 o'clock in the morning often. So planning what happens the next day is fundamental, and we see it. We try to cheat the system. So say, let's try and only give 6 hours, because then we can use all our flashy modalities we have in the training centre. Or we see it through your panel with the data tracking of the resting heart rate goes up, heart rate variability is affected, and performance on the pitch. And we won't suffer in that moment. We suffer 2-3 weeks down the line with soft tissue injuries. So sometimes just doing the basics well. So the team are in Germany this evening. They'll get back at 3 o'clock in the morning. Non-negotiables. We will not start the next day until midday as a non-negotiable. So I think sometimes respecting the basics, and then you can build from there as a building block.
Yeah, I think on sleep as well, there's a paper sort out fairly recently. They're looking at injury risk, I think 1.6 times higher injury risk for following a night's poor sleep. So it's a huge factor, and it's probably something we measure in terms of self-reported sleep duration. That was something we typically ask our players: how long did you sleep? How well did you sleep? I think more and more now, players are wearing whoops, players are wearing Oura rings. So we're sort of probably in a position at the minute of they're collecting their own data, and we're collecting a little bit of data as well. And I think it comes back to what you were speaking about before. Probably need to find a way for clubs to be able to view that and look at that in a little bit more detail than it is being done at the minute, because it's probably the most impactful thing you can do for your recovery, along with nutrition.
Yeah, so for me it's fundamental. And when I sat in the audience a couple of minutes ago and I heard you talking about sleep, then I thought, hey, this guy has a point, because it's fundamental, and it's not only how long you sleep, but how good you sleep. And if I look at the research here, now we have a lot of models where sleep is at the bottom, and then you have nutrition, and then you have cold water immersion, and you have treatments and this kind of things. But actually, I would like to see another model where we put sleep in the middle, and all the other modalities we use to enhance sleep, because we know also in FC the Bosch, we play mostly 1 game a week. So if you don't sleep well the night after the match, okay, you still have enough time. Sometimes we play Friday, Monday, sometimes, but there we monitor the sleep, and we see that people sometimes for a couple of nights they do not sleep well. And but yeah, we take an ice bath after the match, and then I think, okay, we know why ice bath is good, but maybe we should change this and to think about they play a match, there are a lot of hormonal effects already high. That probably might make sleep worse. Is it possible to take a warm bath instead of an ice bath in order to relax them, in order to facilitate sleeping? Nutrition. We all know the general rules about proteins, about carbohydrates, but I think we should work with the nutritionist in order to make it even more specific to enhance sleep. And especially if we look at the cycle of the sleep, we know that there is a phase, the deep sleep, in which the growth hormones get produced, in which the immune system gets stronger, in which there are so many effects that you can enhance, and this is fundamental.
I think this is actually probably something I can help answer as well. I worked with the sleep coach you spoke with at Brentford Anna West, and it was really interesting because I was brought in at a time where they didn't have player care at all, and so we had a sleep coach, but then we had players in a hotel for 4 months after they signed, and so for me it's like I totally agree. Sleep is vital. And I think this is one of the biggest ways where the player care side can really help to to work with the medical guys, because we're often hearing that sleep's so important, and then we look at their home life, and they've got 2 young kids at home who are waking them up 3 times a night, and they're sleeping in a hotel with in short sort of confined because they can't find a place to live, and they're getting up early because they've moved to the wrong part of London and having to drive an hour and a half because they're living in the wrong part of London. These are all things that I've seen, and so these are things I think where we are so good in football at looking at the sort of marginal gains at the training ground, and then we forget the other 15, 16, 18 hours a day when they're not at the training ground, and there's so little put into that. And so I totally agree with what the panel has said, and I think looking at not only what we're doing when we're traveling as a team, but also when the players are at home and they're doing that, I think is really, really important. Yeah, we've got a lot of questions here. So Bruce, you were first. I'll come to you.
Cheers, thank you. Good morning. So with the emergence of younger players now playing at the professional standard, with Max Downing, of course, at Arsenal, and Rio at Liverpool, how do you manage the natural growing pains of that particular player, as well as injuries? And for you, Hugo, how do you manage the care of that particular player coming from the academy into the first team?
Yeah, I work in the academy side, so I'll probably start on that. I think at the minute it's probably not done very well. I think probably Hugo might agree as well. Generally, when a player transitions from an academy to a first team, even though they're 16, they're put in a first team group and sort of left to work it out for themselves. In academies, because the way the Premier League is set up, you need certain provision. You need psychology, player care around. Whereas you go to the first team and it's sort of as you want to do as a club. So that is challenging, and we are seeing players breaking through at younger and younger ages. So that's only going to be a problem sort of moving forwards. The game's getting more physical. We know that the distances they run are higher. So putting a 16-year-old into that environment and hoping that they're going to survive is not going to work probably. I think we need to probably have a better link between academies and first team, and have staff that can support, because ultimately these are your best players as well. These are your most high profile players, and you wouldn't put them in somewhere. You wouldn't send them to another club and just say all the best, hope it goes well for you. I think we need to be able to have support that moves with them, certain key staff members that move with them from an academy to a first team, to be able to say they're not quite ready for the demands that the first team training have got. They need an extra day here. They need a little bit of time away from football. They need a little bit more support on the personal side to deal with all the social media and all the spotlight that's on them as well. I think it's not done great at the minute, but I think it's going to be an area that's going to improve, and hopefully it's going to be effective, because it's more and more common that's happening.
I think, and we'll talk about a certain East London club which will go unnamed, but when I arrived there, they didn't get kit. The academy players who came in didn't get kit because they hadn't earned it yet. they weren't allowed to eat in the first team dining because they hadn't earned it yet. And I remember thinking, like, these are our best young players who we want to give every opportunity to, to succeed. And it was, they're not allowed in the first team training ground because they haven't earned it yet. And so what we changed is we when they signed their scholarship, they got invited for a day at the training ground when the first team were off, and they'd meet all the heads of department and they see where the training ground was. Where does the kit go? Where did it go to the loo? We had one player, a young player, told me that on his first day he was too embarrassed. He was called up short notice to the first team, and he held a wee in for the whole day because he didn't know where the loo was and he didn't want to ask anyone because he didn't want to be seen as big time or whatever it was. And that kind of broke my heart a little bit because we've got this young man who's come, 10 years through our academy. He's got his first big opportunity to impress the first team manager, and he's not comfortable because he didn't know where, the bathroom was. And so I totally agree with you, James. It's something that's not done well in a lot of clubs because there's often, and it's not at every club for sure, but it's a lot of clubs, which is you have to earn your place in the first team. And I think actually it's the manager's decision whether they've earned it or not. It's not ours. It's not the kit man. It's not the player care. It's not any of us. It's if the manager thinks they're good enough to be there, then they should be there. And I think that's a real culture shift that a lot of clubs are not getting to. But anyone else want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I agree that that many clubs maybe it has to be done better because mostly what you see is the load, the physical load, but the mental aspect is totally forget. And this is also what I see sometimes in the club. But I get actually an older player, at the first team, 17, 18, sometimes 16 years. They are out of the growth pain. This is more, I think, related to younger player. But still, you have a lot of other complaints because you train harder. You have some other stuff to your training schedule. You don't have only the pitch session and maybe you have a double session, so you get a lot of other pain. And mentally they are not ready. They are talented, but mentally they have to be built up. And this is something we unfortunately underestimate.
But yeah, I think during my journey to get Spurs, it's certainly improved. Now in our first team, we have a specific coach who is that transition between our academy players and first teams, the ones who train in the matchday squads. It throws up lots of challenges. It does test you. So if we have players who are under 18, there's child safeguarding, which is obviously absolutely paramount. We're very lucky. We've got a very good leadership group in our players, 4 or 5 of them, who will then take these young players under their wing, and they're really fantastic with them. Get to know them, make them feel welcome. Modifying like language or banter that's thrown around, but they realise there's an 18-year-old around, so they're very sensitive and impressionable at that age, but they want to impress and maybe to be one of the first team boys. But at the same time, it's very exciting. That's what, as you said, Hugo, isn't it? It's why clubs have academies. Fans love it when the academy prospects come up. You mentioned that, high-profile names. We have the same as Spurs, but it's very important to remember they're young. They're at the very beginning of their journey. And you have to look after them mentally, physically, and medically as well.
Workload management's been in the news a little bit with again another London club unnamed. How do you balance the manager's need, or even sometimes the club's short-term need for results, and the long-term? I guess well-being is probably not the right word, but the long-term prospects for young or older player, where you need to manage their game time, you need to manage their return from injury, but a manager's maybe got 2 games left to save their job, and they want to take that risk. How do you guys manage that? How can you can you draw a line under it? Can you say it's just not happening, or ultimately you giving them the information to make the best decision, even if it might not be the best one for that player?
It's a great question, Hugo, and it is so contextual at different parts of the season. And yeah, I can't sit here and say, we can't ignore what's going on the pitch or the manager's future. And there will be some games where they'll say, "Oh, Doc, that's need here." Yeah. And so then in those situations, you say, well, you ask yourself, is it safe? it fundamentally safe? And if it is safe, you say, well, where can we push the red line? What's acceptable? And you get in a room with the player, us guys, the manager say, okay, this is a situation we have to win, for instance. This is what we believe is safe to do, but however, you must be aware of the risks. So the player himself fundamentally can make informed consents. So there's definitely times in the moment we have to push barriers, and sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. But as long as everyone understands, there's no finger pointing afterwards. But generally, the general scope of the ethos is really for safe return, and we should have squads. The squad should be robust enough to be able to deal with injuries and different demands, and different players can play when needed.
And if I can come back to you as well on the specific issue of concussions in games,
Yes.
that's one that I think we've all seen where player goes down, it looks bad, and you've got to make a sort of snap decision. Often when the player's telling you they're fine, you've got up to 90,000 fans saying get on with it kind of thing. How do you as a person deal with that pressure and kind of block out the rest of that noise from the coach in your ear and everyone else to make the right decision in that instance?
Yeah, again, it's very tricky because if it happens in the first minute to a big player in a big game, your clinical integrity is under the microscope because you have to try your best not to be clouded by other confounding factors. What's helped now in football, I think, for the last 10 years, it is ultimately the doctor's decision. But you are helped immensely. You put your team behind you, the video footage, and they will tell you, say, Doc, you know what, that's what we call a red flag. We'll have to come off. That information helps, but often it's not clear, and you have to make that judgment. And it comes back to your players, so you can know subjectively. But we do some objective testing as well, and you're making that snapshot decision. And even if you decide to keep them on, it's an evolving process, so we have to continually monitoring. If we're not happy, we have the power in game to go to the fourth referee saying we're not happy, we have to stop the game. Sometimes in my career I've had conflicts with managers, but you ultimately have to stand up for your principles and know what's right. And ultimately, the player, the club, and the manager do respect you for it.
I guess coming to you two as well, working under pressure, there might be an injury in a game, or even return to injury. You're getting pressured to put a player back in or get them ready. How do you guys, you two deal with that as well?
Yeah, I think as part of the medical team working in a club, ultimately your responsibility is to the player. It's their welfare that you're responsible for looking after. So I think you've got to keep that at the front of your mind. Like I think as Ravi said earlier on, there will be pressure, and if it's not safe to do something, you have to be. Sometimes you're the only voice as well that's going. Let's think about the risks, because ultimately everyone else you work with, the coaches, the analysts, they're all thinking we need to win the next game. It's all about performance. Sometimes you might be the only person that's thinking, what about a couple of months' time? What about, is this player going to start to struggle? So I think you've got to be aware that that's also your role, is to be the person that doesn't always want to be heard, but the person that flags up long-term things, whereas everyone else might be more short-term performance sort of focused thinking.
So I agree that some medical staff, our main responsibility is of the player. And working at the club, you always have pressure in the mean of you want to have your best player on the pitch as soon as possible. That's it's something we all want. The coach wants, we also want. But healthy as first, and further we work with return to play criteria. So when there is an injury, then we estimate how long it can take. It's just an estimation, and we put on our calendar, okay, maybe you will be ready for this match, and then you work. And if the match they return to play criteria sooner, then we can make exception. Okay, then we do one match earlier. But in my opinion, it's not possible that a coach come to you and ask to rehabilitate an injury 50% faster. It's not possible. And but what I experience is that by working with the return to play criteria is also clear for the coach. okay, I know what he has to achieve for the player. I know what I have to achieve. So let's work and let's see what it comes. But in this way, there is no possibility to create a wrong expectation. And so also for the coaches, it's clear. I don't have it for the next matches. And let's work. So this is how we do it.
I think sorry, Hugo, to further on that point, we always say we see ourselves as part of, we are the performance team. We're not the Tottenham Hotspur Medical Centre, so we don't just keep players for keeping them just to be ultra safe. We're always pushing boundaries. So yes, we have the information and clinical acumen that we know what the issue is, but then we're constantly evolving, saying, well, actually, we're doing better than expected. How can we push? And we purposefully make rehab active and a little bit uncomfortable as for the player, because it's not sitting down on the bed getting a massage. You're in the gym. You're working on other facets of your body that need strengthening, and everything. As James said, with nutrition and all the recovery strategies, everything is pushing to get that player safely, but ultimately as quick as possible back in. And because these small gains do compound over the season, we never do anything unsafe, but we don't at the same time sit back and keep a player for an extra 2 weeks for us to be safe. We're always pushing the boundaries. Sometimes you win. I mean, a lot of times you win. Sometimes you do lose, but that's part of the game.
And I also don't think that if there are players that want to be 2 weeks longer with a physiotherapist, there are really few. Most of the players want to be on the pitch. So yeah, I agree. We don't keep players out for just to be more safe. We push the boundaries, but it has to be with some with a certain respect for the health of the player. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, I've got a question for Dr. Ravi about, you mentioned pushing performance, and my question is training, strength and conditioning, nutrition, sleep, these factors can only be pushed so far. So what's your prediction of next big things in terms of pushing performance and recovery, including stem cell therapy? Peptides are very popular right now, and blood flow restriction training, these sort of things. What are the next big levers apart from, I said, sleep, nutrition training that I've covered already?
That's a great question. I think to look at it globally and holistically, I think probably where it's going and already heading actually with athletes who are ahead of the curve, in my opinion, is what I would coin as hyper individualized performance. So some players will have their own teams already, like behind the scenes, because they're all so different. Their bodies are different, their demands, the positions they play. Now they are incentivized to play until their 40s and beyond. So they're really looking after their bodies. So I think where clubs will have to adapt going forwards, and very probably in the near future, is to maybe grow their teams, but to look at athletes more individualized. What does each person need on a certain given day? Not one size fits all. And I think at the moment for a lot of the Premier League, for instance, it's probably doing a hybrid model, and that's probably because of lack of manpower. We've got 25 athletes. We can't assign one member of staff to each athlete. So I think that's probably the general direction of where it's going to go. It happens in the NFL. A lot of guys have their own teams that work, and as long as the communication is there with their own practitioners and the club's practitioners, then it's normally a seamless relationship. With the specific modalities you mentioned, yes, we have used them once or twice in the right situations, and when used appropriately, particularly stem cells for players that have cartilage problems, they're very, very effective. And I'd say the leaders are probably in Spain, where it's very much adopted. And it's very important to keep an open mind to these modalities. What's the evidence based? Sometimes in elite sport, you can't necessarily wait for the big papers for the evidence base to come out. Often I say, we are the research. So when you have a body of evidence internally or speaking to your colleagues, that could be enough to know that actually we could think about using this new piece of science for the benefit of our players. But I think generally, hyper individualized performance is where it's already heading.
Anyone else want to jump in on that? Or?
Like modality, I think, and especially in Netherlands, hyperbaric oxygen chamber are getting even more famous. There are a lot of more research, and now there is research going on about hamstring rehabilitation with oxygen chamber, and I don't know how it is in England or in some other countries, but I know that in Dutch we are not using this yet, not that much, because we are still researching what kind of effects can have on muscular injury in order to make the rehabilitation sooner. But this is more rehabilitation, more than a strength and conditioning. Blood flow restriction, we use it in the active recovery on match day +1. But we also use it in physiotherapies when you have a certain condition in which you cannot load the joint or the muscle that much, then you can do it with a lower intensity, but with blood flow restriction. But I'm more talking about rehabilitation than strength or performance. But so I think that hyperbaric oxygen chamber is something you have to take into consideration for the future.
Yeah, I think like I'd agree with like what Ravi said. There's a lot of stuff that's emerging at the minute. In things like orthobiologics for cartilage, and there's supplements like NAD that are around and being used and being looked at that might come and play a big part of the picture. But I think probably 10 years ago, you know, a squad of players that would have all done the same training session, would have all done the same conditioning, would have done pretty similar stuff in the gym. Nutrition plans would have been quite similar, and ultimately, I think we're moving away from that, and that we see that doesn't work for certain players. So, if you've got a very explosive player, I think like a Dharma Traore as an example, someone that sprints a lot, very explosive. They might need. We know that they might need longer to recover from a game, so their recovery needs to look different to what the centre backs does. The runs and the conditioning work that they do in a session or in pre-season need to look different as well. There's some research around matching different recovery strategies to different symptoms as well. So if you day after a game you feel sore, DOMSy, you might use things like ice. If you feel fatigued, sort of tired, things like caffeine, napping. So it's different targeted strategies for different players and for different symptoms that they have. I think that's certainly the area that's already in and is going to carry on in that direction. But clubs need to be able to staff that as well. Clubs need to understand that to look after your biggest investments, you need staff that can deliver that. If you don't do that, you'll end up with more external providers doing that for you, and that sometimes can be challenging because you don't always know what's going on. So I think clubs need to understand the amount of money that's lost through wages when players are out. It might be worth investing in your staff and in your structures to be able to look after your players better.
I think that also one thing. I think it kind of sets up quite a nice last question. Ravi, I know you're kind of on both sides of this now, with being an external provider and an internal provider as well. I've seen some horror shows of when players have hired a friend back home who's not qualified, and then the club has to decide, do they try and block it, or do they try and bring this person in who is really not able to work at the level? How do you look at the issue of the player is their own person, it's their body, their choice, with it's their club's asset, the club own that asset, they make money off that asset. That's a really, I know probably not one we have time to do a whole depth in, but how do you look at that as someone who sits on both sides of it?
Yeah, if you look through the athlete's lens, the point that I alluded to earlier on is they want to do everything possible, and it comes down to trust. If there's an external provider where they feel comfortable, they've worked with since they were a young age, I think as long as they are not doing anything we would disapprove of, or kind of going against our philosophies and work with us, then I think you have to embrace it. If you can't reason why you wouldn't want that person to work for them, then it's difficult. It's relationship damaging. Our rule at Spurs is we have relationships with anyone they use. They're not allowed to practice in the building, but fundamentally I can't control what the players do when they leave the training centre. So I think if you just treat everyone like adults, if you're all coming from the same lens, then I think common sense prevails.
I think we've got one question here. Do we have time, or do you want to wrap up? Yeah, we'll go.
I've got a question here for Dr. Ravi. How often does holistic therapy and meditation come into recovery? Because when I interviewed Matt Letizia, he said that when he was recovering from injury, he used meditation. It helped him recover a lot faster than his teammates who had similar injuries at the time.
That's a good question. I would say it's, in my experience, we probably don't utilise it enough. Again, we have players from different cultures all over the world. One of the beauties of working in football, you meet people from all over the world and they have different health beliefs. Where we do compensate is we have like a purpose-built performance and recovery accommodation, so the players can rest and recover properly before we have to work. All the modalities are there. Some players like Pilates afterwards and find that relaxing. But often I think, coming back to earlier point, is I think everyone values their sleep, and if they've slept properly, then they feel most refreshed going forwards. But certainly meditation is not something off the table.
Yeah, just to add, I think it is definitely an option when we give players. I think it's a hard thing to push players towards that don't already buy into it and don't want to do it. But in terms of as a recovery strategy, I work with sort of more the younger players, and I think a lot of the time their sympathetic nervous system is in overdrive. So on a day off, they want to watch clips again. They're thinking, okay, what do I need to do? I need to recover. I need to do foam roll. I need to do, and actually, a lot of the time for them, recovery might be meditation, mindfulness. It might be you get similar benefits from just doing something that's relaxing that they enjoy. That they need to think about things that activate sort of parasympathetic nervous system as part of recovery, and as not a waste of time. It's an important part of being able to relax, being able to switch off, disengage, and recover that way as well.
Yes, I agree. I would use it to enhance the sleep. And what I see there, talking about peak performance, I see that sometimes some players meditate before the match, so with some breathing exercises, and but it's individual. And the most important is that the players know that it's a possibility, and if they want to use it, then will be great.
Like Mauricio Pochettino once told me a great line. He goes, when we sign players, whoever they are, high-profile young players, they are signing to train. That's what they're signing to do. Then I decide if they've earned the privilege to play. And what that really means for me is 95% of your time is in the training centre, and then the 5% is the match itself. So then, what is that? It's humans dealing with humans. Whether we're all on the same team, whether we're on the pitch, with the performance team, the coaches. So I think laughter is a very important thing for de-stressing and refreshing, and almost as part of the performance management team is you have to know when it's your responsibility to pick up the mood. I don't know what mood I'm going to see my players tomorrow morning, depending on what happens this evening. You have to understand the humans' disappointment. Did someone have a good game, get sent off, miss a penalty? I don't know what will happen, but it's our role is to pick them up. And I think laughter and being jovial is very important. It can help wash away the bad feelings and then concentrate for the next game.
Great. Well, look, we'll leave it there. A huge thank you, Luca, Ravi, and James. Really interesting panel. And if you have further questions, please. Oh, sorry, we have one more question. Sorry, I'm being disciplined in the back there.
This is a question for James. And Hugo. So when you spoke about sleep, obviously a lot of academy players, especially when they come to the UK from abroad, they'll have a lot to deal with, moving into a new house, family, obviously being homesick, language. Are there any sleep techniques that you guys give to these players to help them get through the first couple of weeks, external factors or internal?
One part of it probably wouldn't be specific to those players, but yes, we would give them guidance on sleep hygiene. So that's just good habits that you should that you should do to sleep well, and that those are things like not using, this is a classic one, not using the phone or watching TV in your bedroom. Is just using your bedroom purely as a place for sleep, having a dark full room, things like that we know are helpful. There's some supplements, things like tart cherry juices and things that can help sleep induce as well. And then probably for the newer players, and I'm probably hand over to Hugo on that. I think that might come down to feeling settled in an area, having appropriate accommodation, feeling supported, and that people are there for you and are gonna sort of help you to settle in. I think
I suppose there was a crossover.
Yeah, I know you mentioned it, but Hugo all that probably answer that better than I would.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because I think we're seeing one of the changes since Brexit actually is that clubs can recruit players equally if they're not British, basically. And so when I was at Brentford, we signed an 18-year-old directly from South Korea, another one from Uzbekistan, another one from Nigeria. And those are signings that we wouldn't have seen 4 or 5 years ago, where the European players were so much easier to sign. And I think what that meant was that we had people coming from vastly different cultures. And, you know, the young lad, Kim Ji-soo from South Korea, had never left Asia before. And it was something that, like, I really felt for him. And he's the nicest, you know, hardworking, most intelligent guy ever. His English wasn't great, but also we had to look at how do we bring the club closer to him, as well as him close to the club. So I remember that, you know, this is something that I should have thought of, and it's something that I, you know, now is the first day we're like, we're going to get the chefs to make some Korean food so that he feels at home. We didn't have any chopsticks. And he, like, you know, and it's just, that's what he is used to, and that's what he would go to. And so I spoke, you know, we got the chopsticks in the next day, and then for every meal going forward, chopsticks were an available utensil for that meal. And that was something that I kind of kicked myself with, that I feel like I'd missed it, but yeah, okay. And it was really quickly about trying to get him to find a local Korean community, but also not to let him just sit in a Korean community and not try and integrate and not try and get to know it. So one of the things we put at Brentford, which they're still doing now, is national days, where a player will talk about their whole heritage or culture. They will have a chef that comes in from that country and culture, but they'll also talk to people, the rest of the players and staff, about their culture. So we did Danish first, which is everyone at Brentford's Danish, so that was nice. But then we had Josh Da Silva, who wanted to do Angolan, which was his family heritage. Really interesting to find Angolan food in London and talk about Angolan culture and all this. And it was a really brilliant way to bring people together. But then you look at everything and you think, not only did we fly him directly from Korea when we signed him, he's jet lagged. He's then going through the medical in a foreign language. He's then, and we had a translator, but it's not the same. He's then walking in, and you've got not only different languages, different accents. You know, I remember being at West Ham, and we had Aaron Cresswell, Scouse, Smart Noble, East End, Robert Snodgrass, Glaswegian, and one of the foreign players was just like, I don't know what they're saying. Like, what language are they speaking? Because, you know, it's just so many different languages going on, and there's so many of these little things that we see, and we just think the players should go, oh, they'll get it, you know, or they just need to push through it. But, like, I think when you're in a country where you don't speak the language and you don't know the culture, it feels very foreign. And so we always look at how do we bring the club close to them, as well as them close to the club in terms of culture.
That's a nice one. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much for the very interesting panel. So far, I have one question regarding sleep and Matchday +1. I'm from Germany and I work with a lot of German football clubs, and I'm a nutritionist. And I experienced a lot of head coaches wanted to do the players a favor after a winning match, and they wanted to give the Matchday +1 of make it a free day. And so they wanted to do the treatment right after arriving at home after the match, or even after home games. It's easier, but after away games, it's late at night, and they say, okay, you have a lot of adrenaline, so you go sleep later or maybe earlier. It's maybe earlier. Yes, and so they decided to do the treatment after arriving. and give the day after as a day off. And what would you, for recovery strategies, do? Would you talk to the head coach and say it's better to do the next day the treatment and use the day? Because I think it's hard because the head coach is always the one that decides. And for me as a nutritionist, match day +1 is a very important day, and it's better to see the players at the pitch or at the training ground than they are at home laying in bed, sleeping the whole day. And sleep is very important, but yeah, how would you handle it?
Honestly, I don't think it's a bad idea to do the treatment after the match. You know, the players cannot sleep, so you have 4 or 5 hours in which you can treat them, relax them, and maybe some warm up in order to relax them. And you can treat them. But then we have to take into consideration some other things. If you go back, if you play home, you have a little bit more time. But still, if you play at 8 or at 9, you finish at 11. At what time do you want to go home actually? So this is something we have to take into consideration. But I think actually it's not a bad idea to do the recovery immediately after the match. From a physiotherapist perspective point of view. But I can understand that for you as a nutritionist, then maybe you want to have the player on the day after. So how do we manage this? So I think then I would say then we do the day after, so that we all can do our job and we don't miss points. But from a relaxing point of view, from a treatment point of view, I would say let's do this after the game. But then we have a away game, and in Netherlands the distance are not that much. But in England or in Germany or in Italy, is this possible? So it's not a bad idea to do it after, but probably match day +1 is it's better in order to organize everything.
I think we're going to leave it there. But a huge thank you, guys. Can we give a round of applause to Richard and Ravi? Want to say hello to everyone? That's a lot.